Annalea, welcome to the Visionary Life podcast. I'm so excited to be kicking off 2022. This is the first interview of the Visionary Life podcast of this new and fresh year. So I'm really excited to dive into all things entrepreneurship, how you started Social Nature, and anything else that we want to dig into. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yes. So, why don't you take us back just so we can get a snapshot of your journey? What did the years following high school look like for you? For example, what was your first career path and what were you up to before you started the business you have today?
So, I've always wanted to be in business. I remember I was probably 7 years old and dressing in business suits. So, that's been an early desire. And business to me has always been associated with, excitement, life in the fast lane, where things happen. And so I couldn't wait to finish high school. In fact, I remember my 12th year, I moved out of my traditional high school into a bit of an alternative high school where you could take classes in the mornings and evenings. So it was meant for people, with different responsibilities. And so I was able to work full time in my grade 12, my last year of high school, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to kind of feel like I was already in college. And so after I graduated, I didn't want to go straight to college. I wanted to continue working. And so what was the most businessy thing that I could think of? I thought I want to work on the Wall Street of Vancouver, which is Burrard Street, not quite Wall Street. But I went downtown, had my business suits that I was so excited to wear. Yeah. And I was 10 years younger than everybody else. I started working at a full-time brokerage firm. Again, very businessy, finance. And I was an assistant because that's, the job I could get at 18. A licensed assistant, but I could see the stockbrokers on the floor hustling. I could be part of the action, feel the action, and learn from everyone around me. And so I was a sponge. I worked there for a year and a half. I worked really hard and they were ready to actually get, sponsor my license and get me on the stock floor. But as much as I loved the hustle and bustle and the action, what I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I didn't find meaning in the work. And that for me is very important and has always been something that I've done through nonprofit work. As a youth, I would do a lot of volunteering for various nonprofits. And so it felt exciting, but it felt meaningless. And so I decided that at that point that I should go to school just to buy myself a little bit more time to figure out what I wanted to do, really was how I saw it. And so I knew I still wanted to be in business. So I went to business school at BCIT, which again, it was a 2-year program. I wanted to condense my learning and then get right back into the action and hopefully find myself at college. And so when I was studying, I found, again, the stuff that they were teaching in business school, it was interesting, but I was always searching for something else. And so I would bring in the something else through extracurricular activities. I became involved in a student association called, I think it's called something else now, but it was an entrepreneurship student association. And I ended up heading up the student-run business that was associated with that association. So I was learning how to design a website, brand a business, hire other students, develop services that the students could sell to companies, price our offerings. And I loved it. I loved the freedom and creativity I had with that student business. I loved the variety of work that came with starting a business and the sense of accomplishment. I mean, at the end of that student run business. We ended up winning second place in a national competition for this club, competing against other universities and colleges, and just winning together with a group of people, like the people that I, had recruited into the company, and seeing how we made our clients happy. It was simple stuff. It was market research. It was promoting events, things that students could do part-time, but we were still helping other businesses grow. And the way that the organization was structured was that the profit that we made from the business, we decided to support other entrepreneurs, in fact, women entrepreneurs in the downtown east side in Vancouver, who didn't have any capital, and we would give them microloans to support them starting their businesses. And that's where I started to see, business can have a positive impact. I can use the profit from the business to support good and help other people. And that's where I started to feel a spark. What I was still seeking, though, was how cool would it be if the actual product or service that a business had in itself created impact versus just using the profit for impact. And that's where I started getting really curious as a student and researching companies that were mission driven, that had it in their mission to do good. And that's where that curiosity and excitement really started for me.
Oh my gosh, there's so much to actually unpack there. And thank you for taking us back and sharing kind of your backstory. I think that's going to cue up so many of the topics that we'll dive into today. But the first thing that you said was that you've been kind of dressing up in business attire and playing that role since you were a kid, right? 7 years old. And I wanted to ask you, do you believe that entrepreneurial spirit is something that we are born with, or something that was cultivated in you? Or do you think it was a mix of both? Like, why did you have that entrepreneurial startup spirit at 7 years old?
It's a question I've thought of, because I don't quite have the lemonade stand story where as a child I was doing businesses. Like, I wasn't running my own businesses as a child. I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. I knew I was going to be in business. And so I guess there was a bit of that was a bit of a different path for me. My father was an entrepreneur. He was more of a craftsman, though. So he was a solo entrepreneur.
Yep.
But what I definitely saw as a result of his work was how much he loved his work. Like the fact that, he could tune and restore and repair pianos, which is what he does, all day long. And just, it was, if anything, he worked too hard because he just loved his work so much. But I saw that when you do something for yourself and you choose to do what you want to do and follow your passion, how fulfilling that could be. And I also saw, he taught me a lot through his work. I mean, he taught me the value of hard work. He taught me the value of following your passion. He taught me the value of taking care of your customers. I mean, in his instance, he's now working and restoring and tuning pianos across generations of people, because people love his work, and his entire business has been word of mouth based on the quality of his work. And so those are things that I certainly was around as a child and growing up. But I really think it comes down to more like traits. Like, are you curious? I've always been curious. I remember at 15 years old, I would be looking through newspapers at the time. And the Globe and Mail, the Saturday Globe and Mail, and I would read all these interesting profiles of inspiring people. And at 15, I would figure out how to get a hold of them so I could do an informational interview, because I was curious to learn about how they got to where they were, and wanted to learn and be inspired. And I remember around the same age at 15, I literally had a filing cabinet of folders around potential career opportunities that I wanted to explore. And the range was all over the place: documentary film journalist, ethical finance manager, scuba dive instructor, firefighter, all the things. And so I was just really curious about so many different things, and took action every time to learn just enough to decide whether or not it was the right fit for me, whether that was an informational interview, whether that was an internship or volunteering. That sense of curiosity and that follow through, as well as taking that action every time, has been something that's been with me for a long time, and it's certainly something I use every day now as an entrepreneur.
It kind of reminds me of that meme, and I'm sure you've seen it, that says the entrepreneurial path is not linear. Like it's not a straight line. It's like that, meandering line that like zigzags and twists, and it's in a bunch of knots, and kind of sounds like this was your journey. Like you thought you were going to go one way and you explored another way, and you got almost like these clues along the way of like what you were meant to be doing or what that next step would be. And it's almost like looking back, you could be like, oh, yeah, that's why I ended up here today. But what you did was simply follow your curiosity in every moment, in every stage of life, and be open-minded to like, oh, yeah, like maybe I can have a business that has a purpose, or maybe I can start a company that, whatever it is. And so I just love hearing that story, that it was not a linear path. It's not like you woke up one day when you were fresh out of university and said, I'm going to start Social Nature. Like it just doesn't happen that way so often. So it's just great to hear your backstory.
Yeah.
I know you had started 2 companies before Social Nature. So I'm curious, can you just give us a snapshot of what were some of the key learnings from starting those businesses? And maybe what were some of the things that you would have done differently now that you're looking back on those 2 businesses?
Always easier in hindsight. So yeah, the first business I started was right out of university, actually. So I completed, so I went on from college, and then I ended up completing a bachelor's of commerce. Again, I chose a bachelor of commerce with a minor in entrepreneurship, because at that point, 2 years into my university, I now knew, after my student-run business experience, that I wanted to go into entrepreneurship. And yeah, I still didn't quite know what I wanted to do. So I just kept going to university just to buy myself more time. And I knew that the entrepreneurship specialization would actually require students to write a business plan. So I was like, okay, great. This is where I can maybe think of something. And so in my final year, I really just continued to follow my curiosity around purpose-driven, mission-driven businesses. And I started researching all the mission-driven businesses that there were across North America. And this is back to 2008, when I was in university. And I realized that there wasn't any directory at the time. I had to literally do all my own research. There wasn't a directory of these mission-driven, eco-friendly, sustainable businesses. And so that was what I started with as my first business. It was called The Change, and thechange.com. It was an online business directory for ethical, sustainable businesses that were helping create the change in the world that we all want to see. And so I did my own twist on it, of course, because I've always been a bit of a natural marketer. I've been interested in marketing and communications and telling stories. That's why I was initially interested in documentary films as well. And so that was the kind of the approach I took. I would interview every single green business that was on my directory. Again, my curiosity, I wanted to know how the founder developed their business. And in doing so, I created videos around each business telling their story of how they were participating in the change. And so it became the first social green business directory. And we had, it was pretty cool for its time. It was, a bit of a 2.0 directory, not the yellow pages by any means. But because I was so blindly following my passion, I didn't put as much emphasis on the business model. So, I was spending all my time interviewing these founders and developing these beautiful profiles and marketing them. But the second thought, not the first thought, was how was I actually going to make money on this? And so that became that became the downfall really of that first business, because even though I was very good at convincing businesses to join for that beta free period, right? It's the chicken and the egg. You need content on the website. And so you often need to give it away for free for a period of time. When it came to asking the businesses, can you pay a monthly fee to continue to stay on the directory as I continue to grow the consumer base, they said, I have a lot of other alternatives that give me a lot more traffic, like my Facebook business page or like my own website. And even though you're really doing a wonderful job telling my story, even $100 a month is just, I'm going to need to update the profile and all these things. So I was pretty disappointed, but came back from that and asked them the second very most important question, which was just staying open-minded. What would you pay for? Like what I had created, the baby I had created, which was content, marketing, sharing their story. Clearly they had other alternatives. And so what would you pay for? And they gave me the answer. They said, if you send me consumers through my doors that want to buy my eco-friendly, sustainable products and services, I will gladly pay you for that. And so that was then really what pivoted thechange.com to my second business, Ethical Deal, which was a eco-friendly deal of the day website that promoted my first 3 months of ethical deals were literally the first 100 businesses that I had profiled on thechange.com. And true to their word, they gave me a 50% off offer that would, I think my first ethical deal was a vegan restaurant that I had profiled on The Change. And they were a new restaurant. They wanted new customers through their doors. And so 50% off vegan food, spend $20 or spend $10, get $20 worth of value. The deal sold out in 24 hours. And I had suddenly thousands of dollars in my bank account, which, I split 50-50 with the restaurant and kept 50% for the promotional services. And that was completely, bootstrapped. I was just literally working with the businesses I had profiled and the small community. I think I only had about 5,000 subscribers to The Change, which I had, hustled in the previous year at different yoga festivals and farmers markets to try to get those subscribers. And so it was all, I was a student. I had student debt. So I was living at my parents'. I didn't have money to do much of anything, but that's where I got to, and that's where the first ethical deal was launched as a result of pivoting from The Change and ultimately listening to your customers.
Okay, I want to go back because you said something interesting around your first business where you spent all this time building the community and growing the audience. And then when it was time to ask for money, a lot of people just said, no, this isn't what we want. And I think so often in business, we hear build your community first and then launch a product. And I'm just curious, do you follow or subscribe to that mentality? Because that sounds like what you did. Like you grew the community and then launched the product, but it didn't exactly work perfectly for you. So what are your thoughts on that piece of advice that a lot of people seem to be giving and following?
I mean, had I had zero community, it would have been even more challenging to present, to ask for. If it depends on your business model. In this case, my business model was more or less advertising. Yeah. And if you have an advertising model, you need community. If you have an e-commerce model, you need community. Mm-hmm. it would depend on the business model, I would say. But yeah, for business to B2C, well, not so much B2C, yeah, B2C models or B2B models where you're selling access to a community, you need a community. And then you often need to then give your services either for free for a period of time to build up the content side of your business so that you attract the community to the website in the first place, or to the service, which is what I had to do with the change. But the mistake was really not asking the customer what they would pay for upfront, just giving them free access and kind of figuring it out later. And I mean, ultimately, the mistake ended up working out because I was open to listening to the customer. I was open to pivoting quickly. And I was still able to kind of repurpose the community for a different purpose. In fact, it added more value to the community this time, because not only were they able to discover the green businesses, they were able to get 50% off at the green business. So it was a win-win in retrospect. Yeah.
And I just think that's one of the key takeaways already from this podcast is you need to ask your customers, what would you pay for? I think sometimes we're scared to get into dialogue with our dream customers and the people who have already shopped from us or who are not shopping from us, but you need to talk to as many people as possible to get that market validation for, you know, what you think they will pay for. So I think that's a really good piece of advice.
And also understanding the alternatives. Like, I don't think I did enough thinking at the outset around, well, what's the alternative for profiling your business? And when the customer, you know, when we had that heart to heart around what would you pay for, that's where they brought up the alternatives. I have Facebook. I have a business page on Facebook. I have my website to talk about my business. And both of those were free at the time. So understanding the alternatives and then developing a business model around that, and definitely adding more value than the free alternatives will support.
So awesome. So then after the second business, you got the idea for Social Nature. So take us to that moment. Like, when did you decide to pivot? When did the light bulb moment go off for Social Nature? And how did it come to be?
It's interesting because looking back, it really is a series of pivots and expansions. One thing building off the next, really.
Yeah, it always is.
It always is. Yeah. So Ethical Deal. So Ethical Deal itself, the Green Daily Deal site, grew for 5 years. I ended up selling Ethical Deal, but what led to Social Nature, which was launched right after Ethical Deal, was actually feedback from the Ethical Deal community, which in those later years, you know, I certainly made a habit of surveying the community, asking what we could do better and differently. And they gave me the idea. They said, you know, thanks for introducing us to the greener choices in our cities. I'm really having fun going to vegan restaurants and organic spas and naturopaths and eco-friendly clothing companies and all the rest. But what about the everyday greener choices in my home? What about the things I eat for breakfast, the things I clean my house with, the things I you know, use in my makeup routine? I'm looking to green that side of my life up, the everyday things. And so I started talking to manufacturers, because I had really been just focused on those local businesses, those local service-based businesses with Ethical Deal and with the change. And so when I talked to manufacturers like Nature's Path, you know, they do organic cereal and other things. And I said, I have this ethical shopping community. They're interested in trying your products and switching to more organic alternatives. Can you offer 50% off for a 24-hour flash sale? And they said, no. They said, we can't do that. The retailers is where we sell our products through. It's, you know, Whole Foods and other retailers. And that's going to be a competitive offer to, you know, the business that we do at Whole Foods. And that would risk our customer relationship with that retailer. And so I started to, again, think about, okay, great. So that's my business model of Ethical Deal. I mean, it's doing these flash sales to help someone try something new. But again, you know, before hanging up, they said, but we can give it away for free. And so it was so interesting because, of course, free is even better than 50% off as it relates to helping someone try something new. But because I had, called the customer and I was doing more or less market research at the time, I was still running Ethical Deal and exploring, how I could make this happen based on my consumer feedback. I learned all about the grocery industry and the dynamics of why offering something for free was possible versus 50% off. And it turns out in grocery, as I'm sure everyone has experienced, if you go to Costco or if you go to, an event, all the time, brands are handing out free samples because they know that getting food in mouths is the best way to have someone try something new and purchase it in store.
Yep.
And so that's really then what led to me making the decision to start a new business that was going to be focused on product sampling, because I was really excited by helping people change their everyday habits and responding to what my community wanted next, really, and helping people live an even more healthy life. I was kind of helping them with the daily versus the weekly or the monthly habits. And so that got me excited enough to, let go of Ethical Deal and then start Social Nature.
And was there anything like it at the time, or had you kind of landed on a unique idea, the first of its kind with Social Nature?
It was unique because the way we did the sampling. And that, I think, because I've always been very focused on driving that impact, like really truly authentically helping green businesses grow. Like, I am not a fluffy marketer. I'm very much, how can I design a system that is going to help you grow? And because that's what I'm driven by. I want to see positive change in this world. I want to use business as a force for good. And so the business model has to do that for my clients and for my community. And so when I looked at product sampling in my market research phase and looked at how brands are currently doing it, I saw and asked them, is it working? What are you frustrated by? What would you wish you had in your dream scenario? That's where I was really learning kind of what was broken with the system and how I could perhaps add more value. And so that's where we innovated and decided to use digital to add value through the targeting, add value through the measurability of the sampling experience, add value through consumer feedback and collecting that online, but then using what was working as it related to product sampling, which was the offline experience, and giving people an opportunity to try the products in full size, but actually sending the consumer to the grocery store to pick up the product, which was not common. I mean, there wasn't anything else like that at the time where a marketing company was starting the brand discovery process online and then sending consumers into the grocery store for the trial and then bringing them back online for the feedback and the reviews. So we've actually last month at Social Nature released a 50-page free e-guide on online to offline marketing, which is really a wonderful resource from all the learnings that we had through Social Nature, and really translating back to Ethical Deal as well, which was a different online to offline marketing system. And so, we were really early with that approach. And I was able to take a lot of the learnings that I had with Ethical Deal into Social Nature as well.
And I've actually read that ebook start to finish, and I loved it. I just think it's so fascinating. And the fact that you pioneered this concept of online to offline, it makes sense. And as you're reading it, you're like, of course. But the fact that you've been able to put it into words and really just like this ebook that I can really wrap my head around, I just think it's fascinating. So I'll link that in the show notes for anyone who is interested and has a business that might benefit from this model.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm curious, when you were really in the first year or two of Social Nature and building your platform and seeing if this business was going to take off, do you remember what some of your key success metrics were? Like, what were you trying to accomplish in that first or second year in terms of big goals that would mean we are on the path to a successful company?
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I was enjoying with Social Nature was really trying to focus on developing a more scalable business. So Ethical Deal was very resource intensive in that it was kind of like a Yelp model. We had to have local operations in every single city that we were operating in, which was definitely would have needed even more money to scale across North America. I was mostly active in Canada with Ethical Deal. So my ambitions for creating more impact, I wanted a business that I could very easily scale geographically. Immediately, I wanted to be in the US and think beyond that as well. And so I was very focused on kind of setting up my operations from the beginning for scale. And that meant having a headquarters rather than a super distributed team that I had with Ethical Deal, and having using third-party resources where possible for anything that wasn't my core competency. So I really focused on, what am I really good at? Where do I want to spend my company's resources and hire in for, and what am I ready to let go of to other people that can do that better? And so I outsourced my warehouse operations, for example, because I didn't want to be in the warehouse business. But I knew I wanted to keep marketing in-house because that's always been a core competency of ours. So thinking through that at an early stage can be really helpful. And that'll kind of lend itself to, where you hire contractors or consultants or even agencies versus what you decide to bring in-house. I know for a lot of food manufacturers, this is a really big decision for them. Like, right, do they want to be in charge of their own manufacturing, or are they going to outsource that manufacturing? One of our investors is the founder of Vega, a very popular plant-based protein company. And very early on in his career, he decided to outsource the manufacturing of the product, but really focus on building an amazing brand. And so that led to a $500 million exit, that decision. So it's not to say that that's right for every brand. Some brands really want to control that, but then maybe they're outsourcing other aspects of their operations. So I think it's just a really good exercise to go through in the beginning of your company. The other key metrics that we were focused on was really quickly scaling the community, as I knew how important that was. And it was a little hard because I had just built up Ethical Deals community, right? Yeah. Into the hundreds of thousands of members. And when I sold the company, I sold that. That was
all gone. Like, I was starting back at zero.
I was starting from zero. So, again, I had learned things from that experience, and I learned how refer a friend programs can be very effective. I learned that blogger and influencer programs were also very effective for kind of kickstarting that community. And so I made it a goal of getting to 100,000 community members in the first year of my business. I ended up doing in 6 months. So that was great, by using some of those tactics that I had proven successful with Ethical Deal. And so I kind of set micro goals along the way. Like I got to have 100 eco-friendly bloggers talk about Social Nature. That was, one of my micro goals towards that 100,000 community member goal. And that really accelerated the growth of the community, as they all have their own communities that they were now talking about our product samples to, and offering Social Nature's product samples to their communities, and in turn referring their audience traffic back to Social Nature. So there almost became like a bit of an affiliate network, you could say. And then building in that refer a friend program into our product. I mean, that's free users, right? I mean, sometimes you might need to give something away, of course, back to your community, but building a community model that had a really low cost of user acquisition cost was really something that I was focused on, because I knew I wanted to have a very large community. I knew I wanted millions of members with Social Nature. And so I knew I needed to figure out different strategies that gave me that really low cost per user acquisition.
I feel like you need to write an ebook on just how you grew 100K subscribers in such a short amount of time. It's just very admirable. And I love that, you really emphasized community marketing in one way or another. I think we can all take away a lot from that. And I know that tons of the listeners are trying to grow an email list right now, but sometimes it can feel really hard. So I think those tips are really, really awesome in terms of the refer a friend, working with influencers or other people who already have platforms. And yeah, just some really good tips there. I'm curious, if you didn't have a relationship with a blogger or influencer, but you knew you wanted them to feature Social Nature, how did you reach out to them? How did you pitch them so that they would say, yes, I'd love to link back to your website? Like, what were some of the strategies you used for a successful pitch?
Yeah, I thought about how I could add value to their communities. And so with Social Nature, it was certainly, we had a leg up there because we offered free product samples. And so I would give them more or less exclusive access to that product sample. Cool. For up to a certain volume, so they kind of got first dibs if they were to promote it to their community. And these were full size products, so there was definitely some excitement around that. For companies that may not have that advantage, other tactics that I have used in the past along the same lines is offering, for example, a contest. So that's something that, it can cost you anywhere from $100. It could be $100 contest that can get a lot of people excited. Mm-hmm. And whether it's, giving away your product or service for free that has $100 value, or coming up with something else, just offering a contest. And then bloggers are always looking for content. And of course, as bloggers get more popular, that's where the prices come in, and that's where they're probably going to charge you for those services. But at the time, I was really looking for not the biggest bloggers. I was looking for those that maybe only had, 10,000 followers. And so those ones were more flexible with kind of an exchange like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that what you said about always making sure there's value in it for them, that's an applicable tip for all of us. It's like anytime you're asking for something from somebody else, whether it's their time or for them to write a blog on their website, always think what's in it for them, because what they're thinking is what's in it for me, right? So if you can position it that this is valuable to you rather than just being like, I want you to do this for me, then they're more likely to say yes. So always keep that in mind. What's in it for them? And I think it's the positioning of the request that makes the difference, whether you get the yes or the no.
Yes. One other thing I just thought of, just to throw in the mix there, is especially if you already have an audience. And in this case, I had more than 10,000 followers. So I was able to also offer that as a value, where because they were aligned with our mission, these were eco-friendly bloggers. And in this case, I was able to say, when you post that piece of content, I'll share that content back on my social media channels.
Yeah.
So then I was also helping them grow their follower base. So that's another tactic that you can do, especially if you're targeting those smaller bloggers and influencers, help them grow their community as well.
Brilliant. So where is Social Nature today? Kind of fast forward us a little bit and describe the company as it is right now and just what you're currently focusing on.
Yeah, Social Nature has grown a fair amount since it started 6 years ago. So we are active across North America with our product sampling. We are working with over 500 food, health, and wellness brands to drive targeted trial at retail. And we have a community of almost 1 million members across North America that use Social Nature to make the switch to products that are better for themselves and better for the planet on their next shopping trip. And so, yeah, you can sign up. It's free to sign up, and you can just tell us what retailers you shop at, and then we'll start sending you free product offers or for healthy and sustainable products that you can then pick up on your next shopping trip. And our team is almost 30 people right now. We'll be 40 people in the next 4 months. So we're we're growing significantly. And Yeah, we're headquartered in Vancouver, but with the pandemic, our team has become more distributed. So we've actually just opened up a US based subsidiary and are hiring a sales team in the US.
Nice.
And so now our team is distributed actually, and but it's working. We found a way to work remotely effectively, and I'm still loving it. You know, I still, in fact, I think an important moment for me recently was there was an opportunity for me to reinvest in the company personally, and I did that, and that was a really important moment for me as an entrepreneur, because you know, to reinvest and write a check for your company 6 years in is you know, just a testament for how excited I still am about the company and its growth. So yeah, having that drive, having that passion, you know you're doing the right thing.
And they say that with every new level, there is a new devil. And I'm sure that you've been on this perpetual growth journey as an entrepreneur and leading a team. I'm curious, is there anything that you're currently trying to problem solve for, or something that you're currently trying to learn about in order to become a better leader, a better entrepreneur? Just something that is like top of mind to you at this moment.
Always something. I love that. I haven't heard that saying as you just said it, but I always say, yeah, the problems don't go away. They just get more interesting as you can. So
That's a very positive way to put it.
yeah, I mean, where I find I spend my time now with, you know, a 30 going on 40% company, is certainly a lot of time on recruiting.
Yeah.
And finding, you know, great talent to add to my company, and maintaining and building on that culture that we have. I find that every time the company doubles in size, there is definitely changes to the culture, and some of those are really positive changes. Like, you can hire in a great person and they can be a culture add and bring something new to that is right for your company at that stage.
Yeah.
So staying open to that is important, but also, you know, if you don't pay attention to it, things can slip. And so that's where I'm really kind of looking at, you know, our people and culture operations a lot more. And, you know, for the first time, in fact, I hired a people operations manager. That's not something, that's the first hire I've made at this size of company in that respect. But
Yeah.
it just shows that that's where, you know, the focus needs to continue to be as the company scales. And I'm always surprised at, you know, as I have more peers that are entrepreneurs running companies of this size and even bigger, it's a good checkpoint for me, because I'm always surprised how much time I spend on it. Like, really, truly a third of my time, easily. Some weeks 50% of my time is on something around people operations, people and culture, talent acquisition. But when I speak to my peers, other entrepreneurs that are running companies of similar bigger sizes, they concur. They say, yes, this is where we're now spending our time. So that's kind of just something I didn't expect to be spending as much time on, but I see how important it is for the company. The other thing that's coming through for me now is really focusing on developing and growing my team, like my current team members.
Yeah.
So the company last year grew 177% year over year on revenue. And so something that I've started to say to my team is, as our company continues to grow at this rate, we as individuals need to grow at this rate.
Yeah.
And so that's become, you know, a bit of a saying at our company. And so of course it can't, we need an action plan behind that to support that type of growth. And so that's where we now have biannual growth and development conversations with each of our team members to say, you know, how can we help you grow? And here's opportunities for you to grow based on a 360 that everybody gets. So feedback from their peers, their managers, and others that they work closely with. And it's a positive conversation, right? It's a conversation around your personal and professional growth. And then we ask, you know, we basically developed for lack of better words, an action plan for how the company and how they can help support themselves. And we make time and space for that. So now we actually have 5% of everybody's job focused on personal and professional development.
Wow.
Like it's a mandate, like you must be focused on personal and professional development, but here's how we can help support you. So that's also become something that is certainly a focus for us at this stage that I wouldn't have expected necessarily or really thought of until I was in the moment.
It's a fascinating concept to think about making sure your personal growth is meeting the business growth, right? Like the company grew 177%, but if you stayed stagnant, are you still able to bring your best work to a rocket ship company, right? So I think that's fascinating and something to absolutely consider for anyone who's running a business, or even if you are an employee and you see your company growing, like take ownership and grow yourself too. Make sure you're always prioritizing your skill sets and what you can add, especially with a business that is growing so quickly. So I think that's really cool.
And my side, I apply that to myself as well. So one of the best things I ever did for my own personal and professional development was get an executive coach.
Yeah.
And that's someone that I work with regularly on my development. I get a 360 done, right? So I'm in the trenches with everyone else, getting feedback, working on my development goals, and growing as a leader. And I mean, I recently spoke to someone from Shopify. You know, we all know, most of us know Shopify, huge Canadian success story. And they actually, I didn't know it, but they have something, a kind of a similar philosophy, which was interesting given their growth. They requalify themselves for their jobs every single year. This is amongst, I don't know, how far this goes, but this is certainly amongst the senior management team. They have this philosophy, and I just love it because it just doesn't let you rest on your laurels. It really forces you to focus on growth, which if you're in a high growth company or building a startup, I mean, you need to grow at the pace of your business, or ideally faster than your business if you're in a leadership position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and realizing that what you have, like what position you have now, is not necessarily a permanent state. Like you need to take ownership over yourself in order to hold on to that job that maybe you got. But if you're not keeping up with the growth, or if you don't requalify for it, it's on you, right? Maybe there's a way that you can continue to keep up with what they need from you. So it's a great reminder of that impermanence, that you don't just get to coast always. And it's a good thing not to coast and to actually prioritize your personal development alongside the company growth.
Yeah, especially if you want to grow. I mean, there you can coast and you can maintain the same role that you've had, but if you want to grow, and continue to accelerate your career, then that's definitely the playbook.
So now that you have a team, and I'm sure you have a daily to-do list that is, many items long, how do you prioritize continuing to think about the vision of where you want Social Nature to go, so that you're not constantly stuck in the daily operations? Or like, do you have time to just sit back and dream about what's possible in the next 10 years? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely an ongoing struggle, but you have to create time for it. And so how I've created time for it is a number of different ways. One is I do it with my team. So we have quarterly offsites where we look back at what we've done and where we're going. So that's really helpful. And then we have an annual kind of one that looks even further ahead, more to the 3-year mark. And so those are really helpful moments for planning and reflection as a team. Personally, I find that I do my best thinking, even though I'm not consciously thinking about the business per se. I'm not in the day-to-day when I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
So for me to get away, again, I'm not doing work, but I'm letting my mind think freely.
Yeah.
And always after those vacations, I have new moments of clarity. As an example, that when I went on vacation is when I decided to sell Ethical Deal and start Social Nature. Just that moment of clarity came around what is my purpose and how does this help me create more impact, and letting go of that fear of selling something that I had worked 5 years at and was in a good place, but to start something new, that came after a vacation. And so taking those breaks, those regular pit stops, I don't just take an annual vacation. I also do quarterly little long weekends where I try to create that space for myself. And it's not that I necessarily have a outcome that I want after those 4 days or 2 weeks or whatever it is. It's just that I get myself out of the day to day. So I find those are things that are helpful. And then even on a weekly basis, I try to Friday night till Sunday morning, really just again, unplug, get into nature, and let my mind think differently. And sometimes the best ideas do come in the shower or when I'm walking or chatting with friends. And so that's how I get myself out of my day-to-day headspace.
Yeah. And I always think back to a quote that one of my business mentors told me. He said, if you want to be more creative, go to a creative place. Like, you have to get out of your daily routine. So whether that's going on vacation and dreaming about work or just going to a coffee shop with a friend, like, you can't expect to just like sit here 24/7 and to continue to be a visionary of your company. So you got to switch it up and always keep things fresh. And I love that you give yourselves those quarterly breaks and plan in those offsite meetings so that there's time for the vision and that you're not just, bogged down in daily to-do lists. So it's great.
Yeah. The other thing that I found, maybe I would have liked to do earlier, but I didn't really know about it until later in my career was, and there's many different models, but the one I use is OKRs for planning. So setting, one or more clear objectives, and then some key results that you want to, work towards in support of that objective. And then some supporting lines that help you accomplish that key result, and really taking the time to develop that structured plan and then using that on a monthly basis to revisit and make sure you're on track with that, having some key KPIs to help you know whether you're on track or off track as well. So that structure, I think I could have used that in my second year, but I didn't use that until my fourth year. But yeah, learning those structures, and there's lots of stuff on Google and stuff around that, or books you can read, can be helpful.
Yeah, I totally agree. I use a similar system, and it's just such a simple framework that's not just like sit down and write out some goals. It's like, what is the outcome you're trying to achieve here? What are the outputs and what are the measurable results that'll tell you you are on track, right? And it can just be like a simple little chart. So it's awesome that you do that. This has been amazing. I feel like I could pick your brain for quite some time, but before we end off, where can people learn more about you as an amazing entrepreneur, about Social Nature, which is an opportunity for them to try better for you products? Where are the best places for our listeners to connect?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn personally, so definitely invite anyone to connect with me on LinkedIn. And then Social Nature is just socialnature.com. It's free to sign up and join our community. And so I invite you to do that as well. And otherwise, if you're in Vancouver, BC, this is where I live, and I love to rock climb and go hiking. So if any of you are into that, hit me up.
Cool. Find you on the rock walls. I love that.
Exactly. Let's go climbing.
Let's have our business meeting while climbing. Is that like the new way we do things?
I love that.
So awesome. Well, Annalea, thank you so much for sharing your story on the Visionary Life podcast. We really appreciate you opening up about your journey and wish you all of the best as you continue to accomplish epic things. So thank you.
Thank you.